Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie didn't accept their royal exile quietly. Behind palace doors, they activated legal teams and examined historical statutes, questioning the king's right to unilaterally revoke inherited titles. Their challenge, subtle yet dangerous, set in motion potential constitutional standoff, one that could ripple far beyond Buckingham Palace. Meanwhile, Prince Harry's very public legal threats and incendiary interviews added volatile fuel to an already precarious moment. If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. This wasn't just a family disagreement. It became a legal and institutional test for the monarchy itself. As Charles pushes toward a more centralized and streamlined reign, the York sisters' legal counterpunch could set precedent across the Commonwealth. It's a showdown between monarchy as lineage and monarchy as bureaucracy. And with public support fragmenting and media scrutiny intensifying, the Crown's legal footing is being questioned in ways not seen in generations. At exactly 9 a.m., without fanfare, announcement, or even a ceremonial gesture, King Charles III signed a decree that effectively rewrote the inner structure of the royal family. With that single act, Prince Harry, Princess Beatrice, and Princess Eugenie were stripped of their royal titles, their styles, and all public functions, erased from a monarchy's official landscape as swiftly as they'd once been celebrated by it. No public address, no Buckingham Palace statement. Just a silent, strategic act that sent shockwaves through the royal institution and left the public, the press, and the palace reeling. But make no mistake, this was an emotional outburst or a knee-jerk reaction to media drama. This was months in the making. Every part of the timing, the wording, the rollout, it was deliberate, calculated. The order was signed to align with key royal anniversaries and public-facing dates, so its impact would land like a thunderclap across a carefully orchestrated calendar. It wasn't just a message. It was a purge. And the message was clear. Loyalty is no longer assumed. It must be absolute. This was a final cut. After years of televised interviews, tell-all memoirs, leaked audio clips, and a slow but steady alignment with anti-monarchy sentiment, the writing had been on the wall. His rebellion wasn't quiet or hidden. It was broadcast, syndicated, and marketed. He became more than just a disgruntled royal. He became a threat to the very thing he was born in. And yet, what took everyone by surprise was that he wasn't removed alone. Beatrice and Eugenie, two of the least controversial members of the family, at least publicly, were included in the decree. The York sisters had, for years, been seen as peripheral royals, rarely making headlines, often keeping to the edges of royal affairs. But behind the scenes, something else had been brewing. According to internal sources, both sisters had grown increasingly dissatisfied with their roles, or lack thereof, in the modern monarchy. Quietly, strategically, they began exploring legal avenues, historical statutes, legal loopholes, confidential advice from constitutional experts. They wanted to know whether the king, even as sovereign, truly held the unchecked power to strip titles that were inherited by blood. And in doing so, they crossed an invisible line. Their names were added to the same decree as Harry's, not as collateral damage, but as calculated targets. In Charles' eyes, and more crucially, in the eyes of his most trusted advisers, they had become liabilities. Silent ones, yes, but dangerous nonetheless. What followed was a full-blown royal excommunication. Behind closed doors, chaos, tensions boiling over. Walls that once shielded generations of private conflict from public scrutiny were cracking fast. And in the background, quietly but unmistakably, stood Camilla. The Queen Consort's influence in this restructuring has been understated in public coverage, but internally, it's understood. Camilla didn't just support the move. She shaped it. Her strategy has always been discipline over drama, loyalty over legacy. For years, she's played the long game, standing behind Charles, pulling threads discreetly, and urging him to modernize the monarchy, not just cosmetically, but structurally. To her, the time for sentimentality ended a decade ago. This act wasn't about punishing rebellious family members. It was about streamlining the monarchy into a leaner, tighter, more controllable institution. Fewer loose ends, fewer unpredictable variables. A rebranded royal family that could survive scandal, disloyalty, and a collapse of blind public reverence. And if that meant cutting out the king's son and nieces, so be it. This wasn't just a political act. It was a personal one. Charles may have worn the crown when he signed a decree, but he was also a father. And a father choosing to cut his son from the family isn't just a scandal. It's trauma. The emotional cost of this moment, while hidden from public view, is undeniable. Relationships severed, bonds broken, and what's left in the aftermath? Silence. Strategic, intentional silence from the palace. No rebuttals, no justifications, no explanations, just a deafening absence of noise. And that silence has only fueled speculation about what this really means, what's coming next, and what the future of the monarchy actually looks like. Public reaction? Divided. As expected. Some see Charles as finally doing what needed to be done, putting duty above drama, cleaning house to protect the crown. Others see it as cold, cruel, even tyrannical. A king willing to exile his own blood to consolidate control. And Harry? He didn't stay quiet. In a spontaneous live interview, one that seemed more raw than rehearsed, he leveled a devastating set of accusations against senior royals. Gaslighting, manipulation, emotional abuse. He didn't name names. He didn't need to. The damage was done. The interview shattered any illusion of behind-the-scenes reconciliation. It reframed the purge not as a decision made in the interest of unity, but as an act of institutional brutality. And it got worse. Harry hinted at legal retaliation. His team, reportedly, is exploring whether the decree itself can be challenged on constitutional grounds. Not unlike the York sisters, who have already begun pushing their own legal response. Quietly, but together, their resistance could ignite a landmark challenge to royal authority. Not in spirit, but in law, because this isn't just a personal fight anymore. It's a constitutional one. Can a monarch, any monarch, revoke titles rooted in hereditary succession without oversight, without parliamentary approval, without public scrutiny? The York sisters are betting the answer is no. And if they are right, the monarchy could be forced to face a reckoning it has spent centuries avoiding. A public redefinition of what power the crown truly holds and what limits it must obey. Which brings us to the palace's most glaring omission in all this, Prince William. The heir to the throne has remained completely, conspicuously silent. No statements. No shows of support. No subtle press leaks. Nothing. And that silence, it's louder than any words. It raises real questions about where he stands in all this. Is he supporting his father from the shadows? Is he uncomfortable with the brutality of it all? Or is he quietly waiting for his own tone, watching as the institution is destined to lead Byrne through its inner circle? Because make no mistake, this isn't just a scandal. It's a succession issue. With Harry gone, his children's names are vanishing from official records. Their future roles? Undefined, unacknowledged, potentially unwelcome. And if Beatrice and Eugenie are permanently sidelined, the royal family's inner structure becomes dangerously narrow. Fewer working royals, fewer heirs, less stability. It's a monarchy running on fumes. And Charles, for all his attempts at modernization, may be presiding over the slow collapse of the very institution he is trying to save. The truth is, the monarchy has always walked a fine line between tradition and evolution, family and institution, mystique and accountability. This purge didn't balance those tensions. It detonated them. And now, we're left watching a royal family that once symbolized unity descend into silence, lawsuits, and symbolic exile. The question isn't just who still holds a title. It's whether titles even mean anything anymore. Let us know what you think. Was this Charles securing the monarchy's future, or was it the beginning of its end? Did Harry, Beatrice, and Eugenie deserve to be erased? Or is the crown tightening its grip out of fear, not strength? Leave a comment, share the story, and hit subscribe, because the royal drama is nowhere near finished. This story may have started with a signature, but where it ends, that's still unwritten. There's something about royal drama that's different from your everyday family fallout. Maybe it's the centuries of tradition, the gold-trimmed palaces, the archaic rules held together by ceremony and silence. But when that silence breaks, when the drama spills from behind the velvet curtains into full public view, it's chaos. Controlled chaos, but chaos nonetheless. And that's exactly what's happening now. King Charles's decision to strip Prince Harry, Princess Beatrice, and Princess Eugenie of their titles wasn't just a personal betrayal. It was an institutional reckoning, a move that snapped centuries of royal precedent and shattered any illusions that blood alone guarantees your place within firm. This wasn't 3 titles revoked. It was a message broadcast across the monarchy. If you don't fall in line, you don't belong. The headlines made it sound clinical. A signed decree, a 9 a.m. execution. But what it actually did was set fire to already fractured relationships and ignite a full-blown crisis within the most public family on earth. And let's be honest, this isn't just about paperwork. Titles in the royal world aren't decorative. They are identity, status, authority, protection. To be stripped of them is to be exiled, not geographically, but symbolically. Harry, at this point, was no stranger to conflict with the crown. He has been locked in a years-long media brawl with the institution. From his interviews with Oprah, to Spare, to his blunt accusations of gaslighting and emotional manipulation, it's been scorched earth from his side for a while. But this decree? This was Charles scorched earthing right back. The real stunner was lumping the York sisters into the fallout. Beatrice and Eugenie have never aired the family's dirty laundry. They've stayed relatively low profile, never directly challenging the monarchy publicly. But they made one strategic miscalculation, thinking they could question the system quietly. Behind the scenes, both sisters began exploring legal routes, digging into dusty laws and consulting discreet advisors about whether Charles had the legal authority to revoke inherited titles unilaterally. They weren't filming documentaries. They weren't publishing memoirs. But their actions hit the one nerve the monarchy can't ignore: control. For Charles and his advisors, this wasn't a rebellion of words. It was a rebellion of law, one that struck at the core of royal power and the illusion of its permanence. So they were cut, just like that. What's particularly jarring about the move is how emotionally calculated it was. It didn't happen at the peak of a public feud or in response to a scandal. It was planned, timed around key royal anniversaries and milestones, meant to land with weight and symbolic impact. A masterclass in cold, quiet power consolidation. And standing firmly beside it all was Queen Camilla. Over the years, Camilla has become one of the most underestimated and misunderstood figures in the royal orbit. But insiders know her influence is anything but soft. Her support for this purge wasn't just passive. It was part of a long-term strategy to streamline the monarchy, to remove sentiment, cut complexity, and reinforce authority. And now, that strategy is on full display. This move wasn't about drama. It was about discipline. Camilla's approach to modernizing the monarchy hinges on one brutal idea: not everyone gets to stay. And if you threaten the system, even quietly, even from within, you're out. In some ways, it's efficient. Ruthless, but efficient. But let's not pretend there's no cost. The internal damage this causes isn't fixable with public appearances or family walkabouts. These are permanent rifts. Titles removed from Harry, Beatrice, and Eugenie aren't just ceremonial losses. They are public declarations that these individuals no longer belong in the inner circle. And the effect? A royal family that looks smaller, more divided, and more precarious than ever. Now add in the legal threats. The York sisters aren't stepping back. Far from it. Their challenge, grounded in historical precedent and constitutional questions, is slowly escalating. They are not just asking for their titles back. They are pushing for a legal definition of what a king can and cannot do when it comes to hereditary power. If that succeeds, it's not just Charles's authority on the line. It's the whole foundation of inherited legitimacy. Because for centuries, the monarchy has operated in the idea that royal authority isn't just political. It's sacred, fixed, unquestioned. But this legal resistance pokes directly at that idea. And once people start questioning whether royal titles can be stripped so easily, they'll start asking what else is vulnerable to revocation. Titles? Patronages? Succession? And then there's Harry. His recent live interview was anything but subtle. He accused senior royals of emotional abuse, of manipulation. He said the quiet part out loud, and he did it with a conviction of someone who no longer wants back in. But the irony is, his role in this mess makes him even more dangerous from the outside. Without a title, He's no longer beholden to royal protocol. He doesn't have to play the game. And in doing so, he gains what the monarchy fears most, control over the narrative. Because Harry isn't just some distant, disinherited royal. He's still Diana's son, still sixth in line to the throne, still globally recognizable. Stripped of his titles or not, people listen to him, especially when he starts pulling back the curtain. So now, the monarchy faces a crisis from both ends. A legal one from the York sisters, a narrative one from Harry, and in between, a silence that says more than any official statement ever could. And then there's Prince William, noticeably, painfully absent from the entire mess. No public support, no subtle distancing, just strategic quiet. But that quiet is deafening, because if anyone should have something to say about the future of the monarchy, it's the heir. And yet, nothing. That silence leaves a void. One that only adds to speculation that this isn't just Charles's battle. It's a royal restructuring that even William may be struggling to accept or fully support. And beyond the palace gates, the public reaction has split right down the middle. To some, Charles is finally doing what's needed, cutting out the chaos, focusing the monarchy, making tough calls. To others, he's looking more like a paranoid ruler than a modern king, consolidating power through quiet acts of erasure. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Both perspectives might be right. Charles is reforming the monarchy, but is doing it with methods that look a lot more like a power grab than a modernization. And that contradiction is becoming harder and harder to ignore. What happens next depends on how far the York sisters are willing to push, on whether Harry escalates, on whether Camilla continues her behind-the-scenes influence, and on whether William steps in or keeps standing back. But what's clear is that this isn't over. The monarchy's biggest enemy has never been scandal. It's been division. And what we're witnessing now is the most high-profile internal fracture in recent memory. The public sees it. The press sees it. The entire world sees it. The royal family once symbolized continuity, tradition, unity. But today, it looks more like a dynasty at war with itself, splintering, shrinking, and struggling to define what it even is anymore. Is it a family? An institution? A brand? Because right now, it doesn't look like all three can coexist. Here's the part no one wants to admit. This might be the moment the monarchy officially outpaces its own mythology. Because what we're watching isn't just a dispute over titles. It's a slow-motion identity crisis. The royal family, for all its pageantry and symbolism, has always operated on one unshakable principle. Lineage equals legitimacy. That's the golden thread. The thing that holds the whole spectacle together. And Charles just took a pair of scissors to it. By removing the royal titles from Harry, Beatrice, and Eugenie, three individuals born into the bloodline, Charles isn't just enforcing discipline. He's redefining what it means to be royal. And that shift is seismic. It says, blood isn't enough. Obedience is everything. But here's the gamble. It also reveals just how fragile that royal identity really is. If titles can be stripped with a signature, if family can be erased for asking questions or stepping out of line, then how sacred are these roles? Really? The monarchy has always thrived in ambiguity. It's part public institution, part private family, part democratic symbol, part divine tradition. But this has made it brutally clear. The system isn't held together by birthright. It's held together by power. And right now, that power is being tested on all sides. The York sisters' legal resistance might feel understated compared to Harry's media outbursts, but don't underestimate it. Their challenge is one that could force the monarchy into unfamiliar territory, the courtroom, and that's where the institution loses its usual advantages. In court, there's no crown immunity, no media spin, just statute, precedent, and accountability. And if even one ruling goes against the monarchy, if the court finds that Charles overstepped by revoking hereditary titles without due process, that's it. The illusion of unchecked royal authority crumbles, not just for the UK, but across the Commonwealth. Every country still tethered to the crown would have to reevaluate the legitimacy of a royal structure built on assumptions, not legal clarity. And let's not forget, the monarchy is already standing on shaky ground globally. Jamaica is moving toward Republican status. Australia's debates around cutting ties with the crown are louder than ever. Charles needed to project unity, control, and stability. Instead, he is now presiding over a family civil war and a potential constitutional crisis. Meanwhile, the internal silence from the rest of the family says it all. There's no counter-narrative being pushed. No show of solidarity. Just an increasingly isolated king, a queen consort running the chessboard behind the scenes, and an heir, the one who should be stepping forward, keeping himself conspicuously removed. William's refusal to publicly engage is starting to raise more eyebrows than the scandal itself. And that silence doesn't read as neutrality anymore. It reads as calculation. A deliberate step back. Maybe out of self-preservation. Maybe out of quiet dissent. Either way, it's yet another crack in a palace that was already under strain. What Charles may not have fully accounted for is that once you start severing ties within the family, you don't just lose a people, you lose the image. The monarchy thrives on the fantasy of cohesion, the balcony appearances, the holiday photos, the idea that even when the world is chaotic, the crown remains intact. But now, that crown looks more fractured than ever. Harry is on the outside throwing grenades. The York sisters are lawyering up. Camilla is pulling strings like a corporate strategist. And Charles, for all his regal posturing, is beginning to look less like a reformer and more like a monarch in crisis control mode. It's a reset, yes, but at what cost? The monarchy Charles is building is leaner, more centralized, less tolerant of dissent, but it's also colder, lonelier, and publicly more vulnerable than it has ever been. Because once the titles are stripped, once the blood ties are broken, what remains? A brand. And brands can't survive on nostalgia alone. Let us know where you stand. Was this the necessary evolution of an outdated institution, or a ruthless move that will haunt the crown for years? Should royal blood mean lifelong status, or has Charles drawn the line where it truly belongs? Comment below, share your take, and don't forget to subscribe. Because if this is how far the monarchy is willing to go to protect itself now, you'll want to be here when the consequences come crashing in.